The UFC has taken their fight nights on the road, and they're going all the way to Seattle. They have former two-division world champion Henry Cejudo taking on Song Yadong. This card was plagued. 6 different fights were canceled and removed from this card in the last couple of weeks, but they managed to put together a pretty decent product for us this weekend. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to break down the entire UFC Seattle fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and DraftKings plays. But before we look forward, let's look back. UFC Vegas 102 was a wild success for our community. And when I say our community, I'm talking about the people who go to WeWantPicks.com and they are members. On that website, you have a full suite of tools and insight and information to help you make some money, help you have some fun going into the weekend, and it's only $10. It's $10 for an entire month. So the people who signed up last week and had access to everything UFC Vegas 102, which was a wild success, still have 3 more cards for that $10. If you sign up now, you have a full month, 4 full cards of tools, insight, information, not only for DraftKings Fantasy, but also betting, picks, artificial intelligence, FanDuel, all sorts of other things as well. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member, it's freaking $10. If we take a look at the success last week, Josh Shocks built a $14,000 lineup. One single lineup. He built an optimal lineup, meaning quite literally the best lineup you could ever build. And it paid handsomely. He tied for first in the $400,000 tournament. And then David in our Discord said, hey, it's not quite as big as Josh's, but I also built a winning lineup. He built the number 1 lineup in a $20,000 tournament. And the community is having this success because of the tools. David specifically said it was the fight simulator that did it. The event simulator takes everything on that card, all the fighters on that card. It takes in implied probability, historical DraftKings points earnings, striking stats, grappling stats. It takes all that information and then it simulates the fights 100,000 times. And then it spits out those results. You can then take those results and build DraftKings lineups. You can use those results for other things as well, like betting. David used it and he built himself a winning lineup. Here's some other people that have built winning lineups with the DraftKings Fight Simulator. The Fight Simulator is brand new. It has only existed for 3 events. And after every single event, we're getting messages like this. Built a winning lineup. Simulator did it. But we don't only have the simulator. We also have the best DraftKings ownership projections on planet Earth. The $14,000 Josh Shocks lineup was built using the ownership. He did not use the simulator. He used the ownership. And that's why it's important to have a full breadth of tools and not just one. The ownership projections are quite literally the best on planet Earth. We are beating roto grinders. Awesome. Like, we're beating these giant companies whose entire existence is to give you DFS information. We are giving you better information for literal 1/10 of the price, and we have more tools. It's not even remotely close. Quite literally, we have the best DraftKings offering on the planet. It is not even a debate. The best DraftKings ownership projections, a fight simulator, a DraftKings optimizer, and that's just in the world of building DraftKings lineups. Once you've built it, and once the event is over, we have a full post-mortem on our website. We'll give you all the details of every fighter, what they scored, who was in the optimal lineup, what that looked like in terms of how many people actually hit optimal. And if you take a look, obviously we know Josh did, one of our premium members. Only 12 people in that tournament had built optimal. And Josh, one of our premium members, was one of them. Become a premium member today. It's absolutely insane how well things have been going. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. It's $10 for a month. It's $100 for a year. Roto Grinders is going to charge you $100 for 1 month. $100 gets you a full year. If you want to say, F it, I never have to worry about this again, $300 lifetime access. There's no tiers. The betting isn't separated from the DFS. The FanDuel isn't separated from the DraftKings. It is one single package. Picks, bets, tools, DraftKings, daily fantasy, FanDuel, Underdog, Prize Picks, everything. One package. $10 for an entire month. My whole job here is to build the best product at the best price and just grow it like that. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top. Let's go ahead and talk about this card. What do you think? Hey, I thought that was a pretty good intro, guys. Fiery. I backed up all my claims with facts. I liked that intro. Sometimes I'm a little sluggish with the intro and Not this time. I'm feeling it. I'm very passionate. In 100% all seriousness, that fight simulator has got me so freaking excited. It's only existed for 3 weeks on the site. We didn't raise the price. We just added another tool that we built from the ground up, and it's working. And we kept the price the same. And the signups seem to be following suit. So I genuinely thank every single one of you for being here. I appreciate you. And if you're watching and you're not a premium member and you're considering it, give it a try. It's freaking $10. Who cares? Think about all the things you waste $10 on. And if you're not considering it, that's fine. Thanks for the watch. Do me a favor, at least click like on the way out. Let's go ahead and break down this card. UFC Seattle, as I mentioned, plagued by last-minute switcheroos. Random fights have been added. There's about 3 fights, and I'll address them when we get there, that were just added in the last week. Just added. It's not fighters that were already on the card, new opponent. No. Both people out of thin air added to the card. All we can do is assume that they are ready to go. It's impossible to know how, if they had a camp, how it went. Like, we won't know. We don't know. Obviously, we can watch the weigh-ins, see who looks like they're dying, who doesn't. But outside of that, fights that just get added randomly, I don't know what kind of shape these people keep themselves in the offseason. But let's go ahead and break it down. We're going to open up the card with Modestas Bukauskas taking on Raffael Cerqueira. Modestas Bukauskas, versatile striker. He is dangerous on his feet. He's a little bit low volume. He has a negative striking differential, so he's hit more than he hits his opponents. But he's got all the tools. He'll work in some spinning attacks. He's clean. He's got some power, 71% takedown defense, typically a striker only. But in this win over Marcin Prachniau, he worked in 2 of his own takedowns. He is quite expensive at $9,300, and I think a lot of that is some recency bias here because he's taking on Raffael Cerqueira. Raffael Cerqueira was just finished. Jocked out in his UFC debut in under 1 minute, so that wasn't a great look for him. But he's a pretty patient guy. He fights loose. He fights fluid. He's not in a hurry. He doesn't chase finishes, but he does find the finishes. You can see here he has 11 wins. 10 of those 11 wins are by stoppage. But he doesn't come out here just guns blazing. He comes out, takes his time, tries to find a rhythm, and then the finish comes to him. His one and only loss was that last fight against Ibo Aslan, where Ibo came in, caught him, knocked him out. I mentioned I think there's some recency bias here. 100%. Yes, Raffael was knocked out cold in under 1 minute in his last fight, but Ibo Aslan hits like a freight train. We're going to talk about him in a second. Modestas Bukauskas has also been knocked out 4 times. 4 times he's been unconscious on a canvas. I think this line is ridiculously wide. I don't think it makes sense for it to be that wide. I am going to pick Modestas here because, frankly, I just think he's the better, cleaner striker. That's why. But if Raffael comes in here, they spelled Raffael wrong. He has 2 F's in his name for some reason. If Raffael comes in here, avoids a firefight, so he's not in a brawl, works to the cage, he's nice and big at 6'4", keeps the striking clean, hits his own rhythm, he can win this fight. I'm probably not going to put Modestas Bukauskas in my lineup. I think there's other spots here for some people to score really big because this could be a weird, boring decision. This could be a big-time upset. There's a lot of stuff that could happen here. All I'm really trying to say is Raffael is better than that last outing. I do think he is UFC caliber. I think he just got caught by maybe the hardest puncher on this entire fight card, and I don't think I'm going to spend that premium on Modestas Bukauskas, who can also get chinned. Then we have Nursulton Ruziboev. This is a fight that was added to the card just last week. He's taking on McConico. Nursulton was not already on the card. He was not preparing for a different opponent, got a new opponent. Both him and his opponent, McConico, were just added to the fight card out of thin air. This is one of those fights. I don't know what Nursulton was doing, if he was training, if he's not. I don't know. I do know he's a tremendous human being. So hopefully he didn't get too big and had to cut a ton of weight because he is 6'5". Luckily, this had 185 pounds, not 170 like his last fight. You'll see in this last fight, he lost to Joaquin Buckley. I don't know how that man made 170 pounds. And you can see the quick turnaround. It was only 2 months. 2 months prior, actually less. It was about 6 weeks prior, he fought SD Dumas. He stopped him. There was a bit of an eye poke, but he knocked him out. Then he drops the extra 15 pounds after that fight for a quick turnaround against Joaquin Buckley, where he struggled with Buckley's speed. And Nursulton is not a fast guy. He's not. He is big. He's got good striking. He's got great grappling. We haven't seen the grappling yet in the UFC, but I promise you, it is there. Go watch his regional film. The takedowns are there. He's catching kicks, taking you down. He's shooting doubles. He's getting you against the cage. He's tripping you. He gets the takedowns. And this is a fight where he may or may not get them or may not even need them. He's taking on UFC newcomer Eric McConico. Eric McConico is mostly a grappler. He's comfortable striking. He's looking to close the distance and wants to get fights to the ground. He's mostly looking to strike. And even though he does want to fight on the ground, he doesn't really force fights there. He doesn't come in desperate to drag you. He'll engage a little bit, and then if there's an opportunity, he'll take it. If he catches a kick, he'll work from there. If you end up against the cage, he'll try to work from there. He's not desperately shooting. Eric McConico's decent, but this is too much too soon. Short notice UFC debut against a giant guy who has grappling, who has striking, who has wins at a solid UFC level. I think Nursulton smokes McConico here, and Nursulton is a guy that not only am I picking, I will spend the money on him in my DraftKings fantasy lineup. Then we have another brand new fight added to the card. We have Nikolay Veretennikov taking on Austin Vanderford. Again, two gentlemen who are not already on this card. Nikolay Veretennikov was supposed to fight last week. He was supposed to fight Billy Goff. He pulled out. Nikolay pulled out of that fight. Then Billy Goff was moved to this card, UFC Seattle. He lost his opponent in Adam Fugit. Then Nikolay gets added back to this card, but he isn't matched up against Billy Goff, who he was supposed to fight last week, now has no opponent this week. Instead, he's fighting brand new UFC signee Austin Vanderford. I don't know what that wild zigzag of a mess is all about, but I do know that Nikolay Veretennikov last week couldn't fight. Could not fight. Pulled out of the fight. I can't do it. But now this week he can. I don't know why he pulled out. Let me know. Maybe it was a 24-hour stomach bug and now he's fine. Or maybe it was a little bit of an injury and now the payday's worth it. I don't know. Not great, though. I think he's going to lose anyway. But let's talk about him. He's an aggressive striker. He can be powerful. He's going to plot forward. He sends everything with 100% power. He will occasionally set things up with some low kicks, but for the most part, he's throwing giant hooks, launches right hands. He is durable. He has no problem with a dogfight. You can exploit his wrestling holes as well and take him down. And that is the key to victory for Austin Vanderford. It might be a new name to you. It may not be. If you're an OnlyFans subscriber, well, you know exactly who he is because he is Paige Van Zant's, I don't know if they're married or what, and they've done a little bit of collab, so I hear. Austin Vanderford is also a former Bellator standout. Pretty good fighter. He's getting a bad rap for some reason. I think anytime you do a little bit of OF content, people are like, oh, this guy sucks. And we're going to hear a lot about that next week with Julian Marquez. But for now, Austin Vanderford had success in Bellator. He's got 2 losses. They weren't great. He was knocked out in those losses. That'll be the knock on him, that he has no chin. But he may not need a chin in this fight because he is a come-forward, grinding American wrestler. And that's what he's going to do. He'll strike with you a little bit. He's got some decent striking. He'll strike a little bit. He'll shoot some takedowns, and he will grind. He'll bump and grind if you pay the $10 a month. But in the fight, grind. I think he wins this fight. I have a bet on him in real life. I bet on him at plus 160. He is now full-blown the favorite. Society saw Austin Vanderford's going to win this fight. He can get takedowns. His opponent can't defend takedowns. 1 + 1 = 2. It is a fist fight. Of course, he can get caught, but I think he wins, and I love that we got him at dog money. $7,800. Austin Vanderford will be in my lineup. Then we have Ricky Simón taking on Javid Basharat. This is going to be an interesting fight, and a lot of people are split here. Ricky Simón is on an unfortunate skid. That's the reality of it. He did just lose to Vinicius Oliveira, who's an absolute dog. He lost to Batista, absolute dog. He lost to Yadong, who's main eventing this card, absolute dog. So yeah, 3 losses in a row, but they are good quality losses. Ricky Simón has one plan and one plan only. That's come forward with as much cardio as possible and shoot 1 million takedowns, hopefully get at least a third of them. That's it. That's the Ricky Simón game plan. He's a tough dude. He'll continue to shoot, wrestle. He's got plenty of cardio. That's it. I mean, that's it. That's the easiest breakdown we're going to do on this card. And if Ricky Simón can get the takedowns, well, then he can win this fight. It's going to be a tough task, though, because he's taking on Javid Basharat. Javid Basharat's a guy that you love and you hate. I loved him when he was in the safety parlay for a couple of these fights. Hated him in his last fight when Ayman Zahabi beat him. And what was so frustrating about that is it seemed to me that Javid was the better fighter, right? He had very technical striking, can wrestle, chose not to. Chose not to. Didn't turn on the fighting or the striking either. So Javid, while the skills are there, very technical striking, very good offensive and defensive wrestling, he's not a fighter. Meaning, he's not a dog. He's not the Vinicius Oliveira that just beat Ricky Simone. He's going to try to be technical, avoid the fire. Just, ew, don't hit me. So Javid is very good. He's got all the skills, but he's not in a dog fight. He avoids dog fights at all costs. The Ayman Zahabi loss wasn't even a dog fight. It was just Ayman not going anywhere, moving forward and staying tough. That's it. Frankly, that was a close fight, and I think Ayman won because his team, any little jab, they'd be like, oh, and then that's what the judges hear. Frankly, that was my take on it. But the reality is, Javid Basharat was supposed to be light years ahead of him. Look at that salary, $9,500. He was supposed to be light years ahead. Instead, he was falling behind, kept it close, and did nothing to turn it up. Either didn't have the wherewithal or the guts to say, I might be losing this. I better turn it up. Let me move forward. Let me force some takedowns. I can't leave this the way it is. I need to take over. Didn't do any of that shit. Loser. $9,100 here, absolutely not, in no way, shape, or form will I spend that money. He doesn't cover his salary. He just doesn't. So, no, not putting him in my lineup. I do think he'll win. I think he'll defend the takedowns. I think the forward pressure of Ricky will only benefit Javid, meaning because he can defend the takedowns, maybe even end up on top. But there is a world where Ricky gets some takedowns, has the cage control. Ricky's fighting at home, essentially, and they may love it. So while Javid is not going to be in my lineup, you might want to sprinkle a little bit of the pretty affordable Ricky Simone. You might want to throw him in a couple lineups, some even distribution for good measures. Let me know. That's a deep cut reference. Let me know if you got that. I mean, that's a deep cut. I'll give you a hint. Big back edge. All right, there's your hint for what even distribution good measures is from. I'm very curious. I doubt any of you will get it. I doubt it. That's a wildly specific reference. But for good measures, we're going to move on. Then we have Nick Klein taking on Abdul-Malik. Mansur Abdul-Malik. Nick Klein loses his fight. Nick Klein is a skinny, dweeby jiu-jitsu nerd, and the D1 wrestler knocks his head off or takes him down and elbow sandwiches his mouth. That is literally the breakdown. That's it. It doesn't need much more than that. I'm going to give you more than that for the pop and sizzle, but that's basically it. Nick Klein is a long, rangy, which means skinny dweeb. That's Angelo speak. Long and rangy, skinny dweeb. Stays on the outside with the striking because he doesn't want to be in a firefight. Nice little jab, leg kick. He eventually tries to get fights to the ground. I will give him some credit. I mean, I'm being facetious here. The guy doesn't suck, obviously. He will get fights to the ground. He'll shoot nice, clean, like real entries. Like shoot a nice double. Shoot a real takedown. He's not a jiu-jitsu nerd when it comes to pulling guard. And then when he gets it to the ground, he's got good BJJ. Problem is, none of that shit's going to matter here. None of it. Sometimes you just run up against a better athlete. Somebody who's bigger, stronger, faster, hits harder. In this case, also has better wrestling. Mansur Abdul-Malik should be better literally everywhere, except for maybe just straight up jiu-jitsu technique. And I don't think it's going to matter. I think Malik can knock out Nick Klein on the feet. I think he can take him down whenever he wants, beat him up there. The one and only concern is if Nick Klein has like some zombie mentality and just cannot be put out, what could this fight look like later? If we rewind about 4 or 5 years, whatever it was, when Fluffy Hernandez fought Rodolfo Vieira, and Rodolfo Vieira freaking 10-8'd him in the first round, basically, and then got so exhausted he had nothing to offer, and Fluffy won that fight. There's a world where that happens here. I just choose not to live in that world. Abdul-Malik will be in my lineup. I will spend the $9,700, and I think it looks almost exactly like his last fight against Dusko Todorovic, who was actually a UFC guy. Nick Klein, not yet. Maybe, just not yet. Then we have Andre Fili taking on Costa. This fight's razor thin. And it really is going to come down to skill versus just trusting somebody. Because Andre Fili is not somebody you can trust, but he does have a ton of skills. Andre Fili at one point in time was like the next big thing coming out of Team Alpha Male. He can wrestle. He can strike. He can grapple. Like he has no problem with a firefight. He's got all the tools. He's basically a little version of Cody Garbrandt. And similar to Cody Garbrandt, he doesn't have the best chin. And sometimes he'll engage in a fight that's not advantageous for him. Instead of like, hey, let me go all in the wrestling because this guy hits hard. He'll bite down, have some fun, stick his tongue out, swing away, and eat a couple of shots he shouldn't eat. But he does have all the tools. He is very good. Problem is, will he use his skills instead of getting baited into a slug fight? He is taking on Costa, Mezikiel, which we're not saying that. We're just saying Melk. He's taking on Costa. Costa is a well-rounded guy. He can do all the things. He's got creative striking, solid grappling. His takedowns are a little bit forced, but he is strong enough to actually force them. Costa is a guy that will engage in a firefight, will also work in some takedowns. He'll work in the striking. He's well-rounded. Costa is as well-rounded as Andre Fili, minus, let's say, 10%. I think Andre Fili is just a slightly better striker, a slightly better wrestler, a slightly better fighter. The problem is Andre Fili has mental lapses, does things he shouldn't do, makes mistakes. Costa is a bit more consistent. Although, this win against Shailan Nursulton was tooling him up. And then Nursulton got tired. Costa took advantage of that situation. Obviously, Garcia is Garcia. He's going to keep getting those wins. Thiago Moises, I mean, that's a quality loss. It is what it is. This is a razor-thin fight. I do recommend just picking your side. They're both pretty affordable. I do imagine whoever wins this fight scores pretty well. I'm going to be on the Andre Fili side because if he's smart enough, which you never know, if he is smart enough, he'll look at the Nursulton fight and be like, dude, that dude, you can out-grapple Costa. Let me out-grapple him because you can do that. So if Andre Fili goes all in on the grappling, he had a couple of takedowns his last fight against Cub Swanson, then Andre Fili can win this fight. But obviously, if you're on the Costa side, I get it. Dude's good. He's just as dangerous. And he's actually a little more reliable than Andre Fili is. Then we have Ibo Aslan. And Ibo Aslan is taking on Iwan Cutelaba. Ibo Aslan, heavy-handed guy. We talked about it earlier when he knocked out Cerqueira. Ibo Aslan hits like a freight train. Heavy-handed guy. He can knock you out with just half power. Short hooks. He is a bit wide. He can be sloppy, but it literally does not matter. He's all power. He's got plenty of it in his hands and his feet. He can wrestle as well. Body locks and trips for the most part. But if he ends up on top, he is teeing off on you looking for a finish. He does have some cardio issues. We saw that a couple of fights ago. Actually, in his lone loss was a cardio issue. He avenged that loss in his UFC debut. But Ibo Aslan, very, 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 very dangerous guy. And where it's going to get tricky here is he's taking on Iwan Cutelaba. Outside of his last two fights, this dude is kill or be killed. Outside of his last two fights. Look at this. Sub, knockout, 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 sub, knockout, knockout. But somehow in his last two fights, all of a sudden he's Mr. Durable. Cutelaba is a grappler. And if he comes forward, gets you to the ground, he's aggressive. That's why he has so many finishes. He's also reckless and kind of chinny, which is why he has so many finish losses. I personally think Cutelaba is going to come in fast and loose. I think Ibo Aslan is going to hit him as hard as he hits everybody else, and Cutelaba is going to get finished. With that being said, there is just something weird in the air about these last two decisions. All of a sudden, he is super durable, and that is a bit worrisome, especially if he can weather an early storm. If we look at Cutelaba's last win against Ibo Aslan, if he can weather an early storm, get the grappling going, he could definitely take over. Because we've seen Ibo with some cardio issues. I'm going to pick Ibo. I'll probably shoot my shot, put him in my lineup. There's just something weird. Something in my very trimmed six-pack gut that's just like, man, I don't know. All of a sudden, Cutelaba's durable. So we'll see what happens there. But hey, guys, that's the raw feedback in the breakdown. Then we have Julius Walker in his UFC debut against Alonzo Menifield. Julius Walker, not only is he a UFC debut, he's making his UFC debut on about a week's notice. He also has only ever fought 6 times. over 2 years. This guy started his MMA career 2 years ago. And now he's in the UFC. And not because he's BJ Penn. Not because it's like this guy is a prodigy and the work that he's this incredible, huge prospect. And he might be all of those things at some point. But he's in the UFC right now because this card was coming apart at the seams. He was an undefeated guy, couple of wins, and he's available. That's why he's on this card. Julius Walker, you break down the tape, decent fighter. The problem is he only has 6 fights to go off of, and a lot of them are too quick. So it's impossible to know how good he is or is not. Very early in his MMA career. If you look at the fights, he's a little bit flashy on the feet. He's got a little bit of power. There's some holes in the takedown defense, but he's definitely sound enough to not be submitted. He'll even throw up his own submissions, right? You're getting a little too aggressive on top. If you take him down, he'll throw in a triangle or two, try to make something happen to scramble. But Julius Walker, very, very green. And because he's so green, I'm going to go Alonzo Menifield here. Listen, I get it. He was just knocked out twice. I get it. But Azamat Murzakanov is very, 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 very good. This isn't like some shitty loss and Alonzo Menifield's done. Also, Carlos Ulberg, the likely next person to get a title fight. Carlos Ulberg has 7 wins in a row. There's nobody else in the light heavyweight division that can make a case for a title fight after the one that's happening in 2 weeks. And if you're a premium member, you'll have access to that card in 2 weeks. So if we rewind a little bit, yes, we got to go back 2 years, but he's been pretty inactive. Dustin Jacoby, that was a decent win. Came forward, showcased some power, some durability. The Jimmy Crute back and forth, same thing. Was able to deal with some of the nonsense wrestling from Jimmy and let his hands fly. He had a couple questionable decisions in this fight, but he was able to actually submit Jimmy in the other one. The Misha Serkinov win, the Morozov win. Like the William Knight fight, that was just somehow cardio demon at light heavyweight. But Alonzo Menifield hits very hard. He's fought at a much higher level. He's got all the experience in the world. And assuming he's ready to fight, I think he wins this fight. And before you say he's washed and he's chinny, he is old. I mean, he's not young. And light heavyweight's like, it's definitely a weight class you can fight longer than some others, but once the chin starts to go, it starts to go. But Alonzo Menifield should be able to win this fight, should be able to finish Julius Walker. I probably have a little bit of exposure to Alonzo Menifield in my lineups as well. Then we have Jean Silva taking on Melsik Baghdasaryan. Everybody loves Jean Silva. Everybody wants Jean Silva in their lineups. Everybody's betting on him to win by KO. And I get it, right? 3 fights in the UFC, all 3 finishes. But just on the Contender Series, he went to a decision. This fight with Drew Dober could have gone to a decision as well if it wasn't for the cut. Jean Silva's very, very good. The only reason I put that out there is because he's fighting a accomplished kickboxer. It's not just some foregone conclusion that Jean Silva's going to knock him out. But Jean Silva's very good. He's a very good striker. He's powerful. He's fast. He's creative. He's loose. We've seen all of those things. He does a really good job finding his spots, seizing opportunities. If you overcommit to something, bang, bang, he's right there. He doesn't force anything. He's not chasing power. He's not throwing from the hip. He's clean. His entries are great. His exits are great. And he's taking advantage of your poor technique. And that's exactly what we had here. Weston Wilson, that wasn't a real fight. That guy sucks. Charles Jourdain, tough dude, but sloppy. Drew Dober, tough dude. Not as sloppy as Jourdain, but clearly not as buttoned up as a Jean Silva. But Jean Silva's fighting a professional kickboxer. Melsik Baghdasaryan had a long professional kickboxing career before dipping his toes in the MMA waters. And if you look at his losses, it's the people who were able to take him down. He doesn't have a loss in the UFC where he was just completely outstruck or completely dominated on the feet. And that's because he is a very good striker. I am still going to pick Jean Silva here. I think the extended layoff of Melsik may be a problem. Long layoffs in MMA are interesting because wrestlers can come back after a long layoff and then just start shooting and find a rhythm, right? I'm going to shoot. Striking is all timing. It's all timing. It's all feel. It's all managing range. And if you haven't done that in a while, almost 2 years, then it could take you a couple extra seconds to find the range. And if he's overcommitting, if he's trying to find the range, trying to get comfortable, Jean Silva could take advantage. Jean Silva is also surrounded by phenomenal grapplers at his gym. It's not insane to think that maybe he'll work in a takedown or two. Maybe not, but maybe he will. I'm going to pick Jean Silva here. I actually don't know if I'm going to put him in my DraftKings lineup. Melsik Baghdasaryan is a guy that's never been knocked out. Longtime professional kickboxer, has all the tools, all the skills to hang in a kickboxing match, and that's what we're going to get here. We may end up with a decision. And like I said, John Silva went to a decision in his Contender Series fight. It's not as if he is knocked everybody out, nobody could hang next. No. He's been to plenty of not plenty, but he's been to decisions before. So, John Silva's the pick. I don't think I'm going to spend that money. Then we have Rob Font taking on Jean Matsumoto in the featured fight of the evening. Roberto Font's old as shit, and I am leaning on that. I am counting on him being old and slow, like his teammate Calvin Kattar. That's what I'm counting on. He is very good, though. We got to give him some flowers. Rob Font has very clean technical boxing. Very clean technical boxing. His hands are fast. They're quick. Just bang, bang. 1-2. His feet are where they're supposed to be. His hands are where they're supposed to be. In a boxing only. He's not really kicking. He's not shooting takedowns. Boxing only. His boxing only is very clean, very technical. But he moved to TriStar late in his career. And this is what happens, guys. This is what happens. All these fighters, very late in their career, changing gyms to try to reinvent themselves. The problem becomes those gyms try to reinvent you too. And it's very hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Rob Font got to where he was, beat some very good people with clean, accurate striking and very clean boxing. Couldn't defend a takedown to save his freaking life. That's how Figgy beat him. That's how Sandhagen just cannot defend takedowns. Managed to defend some against Kyler Phillips, but that dude is an inconsistent pretty boy. So Rob Font goes to TriStar. Hey, George St. Pierre trained here once. Can you make me better too? And he actually did look a little better in his last fight. But the problem is, Firas Zahabi is going to say, okay, your boxing's good. Let's get you wrestling. Let's get you grappling. Let's get you... You're not going to turn Rob Font into a nasty wrestler at the end of his career. You're not going to do that. And so what happens is there's less of a focus on the hands, which is the hands is where they got him where he is. He's a little older, so he's a little slower. He needs to change up how he's going to fight because he's not going to beat everybody to the punch at his age anymore. We just saw it with the Calvin Kattar fight. Calvin Kattar was getting outstruck by somebody who was supposed to be out grappling him. He outstruck him. And I think same could happen here. So I think Rob Font is a very good fighter. Rob Font has accomplished a ton. When nobody gave a shit about Rob Font and he was fighting Marlon Moraes and he was an underdog there, I picked Rob Font to win. I was riding with my New England boys. But now that he's a little older, we've seen him lose a couple of these wars. I mean, the reality is he caught Adrian Yanez in a nice little exchange there. But that was almost a 5-fight losing. He's almost cut. That little hook, because Yanez overcommitted a little bit, is what prevented him from getting cut. And yes, these are high-level losses. That's the narrative this week. Sorry about the long rant here. That's the narrative this week. Rob Font fought the better people. Calvin Kattar fought the better people too. We just watched this fight. We just watched it. I'm on the Jean Matsumoto side, as you can tell. What I will also say, in Rob Font's defense and your defense, if you're on the Rob Font side, Jean Matsumoto is not Youssef Zalal. Youssef Zalal is a technical striker on the outside who added wrestling because he's still young in his career. He's still evolving. So he just improved the technical striking. The youth showed with the speed. And Jean Matsumoto is more of a bulldozer. He's not dancing on the outside just being faster than Rob. If he beats Rob, he's going to come forward, get in his face. He will eat some shots, but Rob has pillow fists. And he's going to throw his own shots. And he's going to beat up Rob's face. Rob starts to cut and bleed like a hamburger. Rob's face, if you look at him versus Chito Vera, Rob's face was run through a meat grinder, and he landed 2 times the amount of strikes, and he was the one that was all busted up. So I think Jean Matsumoto gets into the pocket, stays in Rob Font's face, makes it ugly, works in a couple of takedowns, and just forward pressure and dogs his way to a win here. We just watched him beat Brad Katana. Brad Katana is good. Brad Katana is durable. He's not old. He's got cardio for days. He'll mix in takedowns and strike. Like, Brad Katana is good. Dan Argueda is good too, and we saw Jean in some trouble in this fight. And he didn't give a shit. He still made it happen. He dogged. And I think dogging his way through an older striker at a lower weight class is going to be a recipe for success here. Jean Matsumoto's the pick. Now, I don't know if I'm going to put him in my lineup because 78 points against Brad Katana. It could be somewhat similar. Brad can wrestle, and Rob Font doesn't. So Jean may just go out here with the Figgy and the Sandhagen game plan, which is just take Rob Font down over and over and over. But Jean is the pick. And there's a lot of line movement there. A lot of people putting money on Rob Font. A lot of people. Then we have the co-main event of the evening. Anthony Hernandez taking on Brendan Allen. This is a rematch. You're not going to see it in here because it happened in the LFA 7 years ago. Ask me. I'll wait. Ask me if I give a shit about a fight 7 years ago. Ask me. Oh, thank you. No, I do not. I don't give a shit. It was 7 years ago. You mean to tell me these guys haven't changed at all in 7 years? With that being said, I'm going to break down this fight as if they never fought before. Because again, that was 7 freaking years ago. Brendan Allen, we saw his evolution inside the octagon, let alone 7 years ago. So we got Anthony Hernandez, basically the Merab Davishvili of this weight class, seems to be an absolute cardio demon right now. Good grappler. Hands are just okay. The Michel Pereira win is really where I turned the corner on Anthony Hernandez. I was doubting him forever. Because if we go back to this fight against Rodolfo Vieira, he was getting lumped up. Just absolutely lumped up. The only reason he won that fight is Rodolfo gassed. But fine. Cardio is the one thing that you can control. So good for Anthony for not gassing. Beat Josh Freem, who kind of sucks. The Barriou fight wasn't terrible. That's a good win. Shabazian, decent win. Kopylov is a very good win, but okay. He's fighting guys that can't defend takedowns, and he's able to take them down. Then he fights Michel Pereira. Finally, a very well-rounded guy. A dangerous guy. And Michel had some success early. And then Anthony does what he does. Stays tough, continues moving forward. He had 10 freaking takedowns, landed strikes for days, ultimately found the finish in the 5th round. Anthony Hernandez has really shown us that he is in complete control of what he can control. Meaning, he's in phenomenal shape. He has phenomenal output. He continues to move forward. He's a dog. He's not a quitter, and he'll do what he can do to win the fight. And he's taking on Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen had a similar meteoric rise. He had his own 6-fight win streak, which is what Anthony Hernandez is on now. And that came to a screeching halt in his last fight. And it's tough because that fight, the first round and the next 2 rounds were completely different fights. In that first round, he took Imavov down almost immediately. Beautiful takedown, great entry, looked amazing. Then rounds 2 and 3, he could not get a takedown and was pathetic. Like, it was bad. It wasn't like, can't get a takedown, but I'm hanging. Like, it was like, please, butt scooting, trying to pull guard. Some of that's an exaggeration, but it was bad. It was bad. It was like, I can't get a takedown. I'm getting lumped up on my feet. I'm a broken man. Like, he looked like a broken man rounds 2 and 3. And unfortunately, I think some of that can happen here. Not that Brendan Allen doesn't have cardio. He's not going to gas like Michel Pereira did. But I do think just that Anthony Hernandez pressure, the Anthony Hernandez unwillingness to back up and just continue to move forward, I think he could have some success. What Brendan needs to do to win this fight is actually go all in on the grappling. Take down Anthony Hernandez. Make him fight off his back. I get he's a black belt, but so are you. He submitted Rodolfo Vieira, but that had to do with cardio, not technique. So if Brendan Allen comes forward, that same beautiful takedown he had against Imavov, if he can just do that every single round against Anthony Hernandez, he can win this fight. I am going to lean fluffy. That performance against Michel Pereira, I told you, turned the corner. I used to doubt him. I don't know if I ever picked him to win. And now here I am picking him to win. That performance against Michel Pereira was wildly impressive. And for those reasons, he is my pick. Then we have the main event of the evening. We have Young versus Old. We have On the Rise versus Accomplish Everything. We have a battle of the nations. Song Yadong taking on Henry Cejudo. Song Yadong, as we all know, Yadong Song, as we all know, very good striker. Also out of Team Alpha Male, so the wrestling is hit or miss. We've seen him have phenomenal takedown defense. We've seen him have questionable takedown defense. We have seen him get his own takedowns. He can be a dog as well. Song has some dog in him. Essentially, he's a young kid. He's fast. He's clean. He's a good technical striker. He's got some decent wins. The Gutierrez win was pretty solid. The Ricky Simone win was great. That's when he seemed to turn a corner. That's when I was like, oh, how good is he? Because he defended the takedowns while still letting his hands go. He wasn't worried. Lots of people freeze. When they're fighting a nonstop grappler, they'll freeze. They don't want to overcommit because a takedown might be coming. Didn't matter to Song. Threw his shots, Made things happen. Ultimately finished Ricky Simón late. Stayed comfortable, didn't overcommit, didn't get too excited. Obviously, he beat Chris Gutierrez, who's a very, very good striker, and then he lost to Petr Yan. But that was a decent fight, and Petr Yan, absolute dog himself. Obviously, former world champion, Petr Yan. But he's going to be up against it against Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo's not young, and that's really the biggest issue here. But Henry Cejudo, quick list of his accomplishments: Olympic gold medalist wrestler, flyweight champion of the world, bantamweight champion of the world. And that's when he left. Beats Dominic Cruz, knocks him out with a knee. Dominic complains the referee smelled like cigarettes and booze, but that dude got blasted with a knee. That fight was over. And then he retires. And you can see here it's about 3 years. Steps away. At the time, debate was, why did he retire? Was it just a contract negotiation? Was he done with the sport? Why did he retire? When he retired, he started his gym. He really built something up for himself, and then he came back. And everybody was like, he came back because he needs the money. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But when he came back against Aljamain Sterling, I thought he looked phenomenal. I personally think he won that fight. If you rewatch the fight, it seemed to me that it was 2-2 going into the 5th round, and I thought he won the 5th round. I thought Henry Cejudo won this fight. But fine. I wish he did. Big Henry Cejudo fan. But even if he won this fight, his next fight was going to be Merab, and he was going to lose that fight because we did see it and he did lose it. He had some success. He didn't get an actual knockdown recorded, but he had Merab on ice skates. Henry Cejudo's got decent hands. He's got some good power. Obviously, he's got great wrestling. The takedown defense, not quite as good as the takedown offense. But Henry Cejudo's good. High IQ guy. And coaching will actually do that to you. You start coaching people, you learn more coaching than you do when you're getting coached. So he's a high IQ guy who has accomplished everything in this sport, but he is old. At bantamweight, 38 years old, might as well be 50. And we haven't seen like his chin completely gone yet, and his only 2 losses in the last 7 years, actually 6 years. Wait, hold on. Let me Rain Man this math. I need the whiteboard like Jacob. His only 2 losses of recent days are to the current world champion, who may go down as the best to ever do it. We don't know yet. And the former world champion, who was the best to ever do it, statistically speaking. So if you throw those losses out the window and you chalk it up to, hey, yeah, maybe Henry's the number 3 guy in the world. Maybe number 4 guy in the world. Well, where's Song? Song's probably number 10. So Henry Cejudo can absolutely win this fight. I don't necessarily think he does, but he's not going to get finished. I don't see Song finishing him. So I don't think Song's going to be worth the money. Because if he's just keeping the fight standing and throwing strikes, I don't think he's going to cover that exorbitant salary. Henry Cejudo could get a takedown or 2, could maybe take an entire round by hanging out on top. So I'm going to fade this fight for DraftKings purposes. I will side on youth for Song Yadong for the pick, but DraftKings-wise, I'll probably leave it out. Guys, that's my breakdown. Join these people. The people who last week took the time to go to the website, become a premium member, and then immediately made years worth of money as far as premium membership is concerned. David used the fight simulator, took home a couple $100. Josh Shocks used the best DraftKings ownership projections in the world, took down $15,000. Here's some other people that used the fight simulator. Had a $790 win. Had a $400 win off 50-cent entries. Jeffrey said, first time using the event simulator. If only I used it in larger contests. We had producer Nico said, event simulator is very good. I won all my DK stuff. Thanks, gang. Not an accident. You could reach out to these people yourself. Use the tools. It's freaking $10 a month. You get an event simulator that will simulate fights 100,000 times and then build DraftKings fantasy lineups for you. You'll get the best DraftKings ownership projections on planet Earth. Those 2 things alone are worth far more than $10. There is another event simulator in this space. We didn't invent the tool or the concept of the tool. And take a guess what that other company charges for theirs. It's called SaberSim. You can Google it. $300. Ours is $10. Get real. WeWantPicks.com. Click become a member at the top. Good luck this weekend, guys. I appreciate every last one of you.